This video is sponsored by Skillshare. Alright, so that's it. Now let me try to break this session down a little bit and talk about what's actually happening here, because everything, at least for the beatmaking part of it, was shot in one single take, and I think that's a fun way to use Maschine Plus in standalone mode, kind of as a looper. But before we get into any of that, let's first of all do a quick message from our sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. Skillshare offers creative classes designed for real life and all the circumstances that comes with it. Their lessons can help you stay inspired, express yourself, and introduce you to a community of millions. They offer classes in a lot of different creative fields like graphic design, film and video, music, and much more. I've watched a lot of the stuff taught by Jung Guru on Skillshare lately. Both his Learn How to Mix Music class and his Learn How to Master Songs Like a Pro All From Home class has given me a lot of value, and I picked up a few good tips and tricks about mixing and mastering from him. All the classes on Skillshare are divided into different sections, which makes them easy to follow and easy to squeeze into any schedule. A yearly subscription is less than $10 a month, and you'll get access to all the classes on Skillshare at once. The first 1,000 people to use the link in my description for this video will get a free trial of a Skillshare Premium membership, so you can explore your creativity. Okay, so let's first of all talk about the audio stuff going on in this particular setup. Maschine Plus is in this case not connected to a computer, so it's running in standalone mode connected to my complete Audio 6 audio interface from Native Instruments. They are completely compatible, so just USB-A to USB-B does the trick and everything just works. I do have to go into my settings and switch that to audio and then change my audio interface from the internal to the hardware MK2, which is this one. This allows me to use the XLR connections on the audio interface, which is now hooked up to my Rhodes Procaster microphone, a dynamic mic that works really good for stuff like this, and that audio gets transferred to the Maschine Plus over USB just like that. So for my first track here, it's just a matter of picking a pad, going into the sampler and sampling from the external mono source, which is now the microphone. And I want to record a loop, so I'm recording a loop for 2 bars as a take, and when I record that, it just ends up in the timeline of Maschine Plus just as it is, and it loops straight away and it syncs up and just works. So that's what I did for my first shaker and for my different hand claps, and that's what it is. 2 bars of those loops just going on. Instead of me having to use the metronome for the entire session, I thought that was a little bit nicer. And for the next track that comes in with the drums, this is just one of the preset sounds that comes with Maschine, or it's included in one of the different expansions I have, I'm not sure. The drum kit I used here is called the Central Stage Kit. Sounds kind of good, sounds like an acoustic sounding drum kit from the get-go, but I also replaced the kick drum to have one of my own samples in there. And I also really wanted to be in control of the length of my patterns here, so I'm just holding rec, hitting 4, and then my pattern length is locked to 4 bars. That's kind of nice. And that setting goes for all the different groups and patterns I did for this one, except from the first shaker and hand clap thing, which is just 2 bars. And the next thing I added here was the bass line, and for this I just used one of my favorite patches that comes with Maschine from the get-go. It's one of the sampler instruments, it's one of the sounds called Adrenaline. It works really good for stuff like this. It doesn't sound like an acoustic bass or anything, it's more like a sine wave bass sound that has a lot of sub bass to it, so it worked for this one. Next up, I added some Rhodes Chords, that sounds like that, and that's using the FM8 synth with a preset called Another EP. I didn't do anything to it, it's just what it is, and it kind of works. Again, it's the same thing, the pattern length is 4 bars, and that's what it is, so everything just syncs up nicely. Next thing on this group right here is this kind of slow evolving pad string sound that kind of just fills some space in the mix. Also using an FM8, in this case the preset is called A&D Pad. Yeah. And for the last track I'm using the same FM8 Rhodes sound called Another EP to play just some notes or like a melody on top of the chords and on top of everything to just give it some sort of flavor so it's not just this chord stuff going on. And since I wanted to be able to cut that little melody in or out of the mix, I just put it on another separate group, so it's easy for me to just mute and unmute like that, because having that playing together with the scratching all the time gets a bit repetitive. So I guess that doesn't really make sense from a CPU usage standpoint, but for me, in this case, it totally worked and it was the easier and quicker solution. And just to make sure that I could get some sort of variation in there, I just left everything play, but I did a variation with my drums. So instead of using the hi-hat, the kick and the snare, I just used the toms and the different ride cymbals for a pattern in itself. So pattern 1 is just my full drum loop right there, and for pattern 2 I just have this one. Maybe it doesn't sound like too much just hearing the drums playing in solo mode like that, but together with the rest of the stuff, with the chords and the melody and the bass line, and just dropping the drums and doing something different like this for a few bars, kind of makes sense, at least to me. So when it all comes down to it, all I really did here was 4 bars of music and 2 different patterns with the drums to have some sort of variation at least. I didn't use the song mode or the arranger or the clips or anything like that for this one. Everything was just live looping and it all kind of worked out. And also another thing that I did here for the drums, at least for 2 different patterns that you just heard, was using the performance effect, in this case set to filter, so the touch strip here controls my frequency of the filter up and down. Just makes it sound a little bit different and you know, just make the drums a little bit more muddy. And yeah, I think it goes without saying that the complete M32 keyboard is just hooked up from MIDI to MIDI into Maschine, and all the instruments and stuff that I have here is played on the M32 keyboard. Simple as that. And for the audio that you heard in the video, it's all captured straight into the camera from one of the different headphone outputs on the Complete Audio 6 interface. One of them goes into my actual headphones and one of them goes into the camera, so everything becomes, you know, live line direct audio like that. And someone could also ask why this one is connected to the audio output from Maschine, and well, it doesn't have to be. I'm not using it for this video at all. That's just sending audio to my audio interface on my computer setup, but nothing I used for this video at all. And I'm pretty sure that's it. So being able to use my Maschine MK3 as this kind of live performance looper thing for both MIDI and audio makes a lot of sense and is a lot of fun. I have done something kind of similar to this before using my MK3 controller connected to my computer, but being able to do this in standalone mode is just, you know, it's more fun somehow. I can't really explain it, but it makes more sense to me to just be able to do this in standalone mode. And in this case, I used the microphone hooked up to the audio interface, but I could just as well use different synthesizers and stuff just straight into the audio interface and just use them in Maschine as it is. So thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Don't forget to comment and like and subscribe and ask questions if you have any. Thanks a lot again. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Until then, ha det gött.
Accurate beats.